The time off is about ready to end. It's Bethany. They are struggling, to say the least. They've had a couple of tough years. But again, we saw how the Giants kind of kept the Steelers in it when you least expect it. These are the type of teams that you got to go in there with a game plan and you got to execute.
You do have to execute. And it's people talk about trap games. And what a trap game is you've got human beings playing a game. We're not robots. And everybody's looking at and comparing scores and this and that. What I mean by everybody, players do that. And unfortunately, we can't get caught in that game because, number one, we're not good enough and talented enough as a football team to get caught in that. And what I mean by that is there's some teams that can make a lot of mistakes against anybody and still win.
So this is going to be the theme of this show, even playing field. So doing a little research and juggling so many things with this election season and obviously out and about, putting way too many miles on my car and getting way too many oil changes because that's how many miles I'm putting on this vehicle. It's a year old and it's got close to 40,000 miles. So we've been everywhere.
Oh, that's a good run.
That is a good run. But I'm just noticing, is there really parity in the pack? And let me just explain. Love the pack, everything about it. But Bethany's played a lot of the same teams, obviously. But they, too, have taken it on the chin against the Carnegie Mellons, the W&Js. I mean, massive scores. I mean, as far as point totals and them having a difficult time, if ever even, and your football team even getting on the board. How do you even this playing field?
Well, I don't know you do. Because I think any way that you do it.
You're not going to make excuses. I know that. But this is just from a fan's perspective. I'm just curious.
Right. I would say this. It's very similar to what we see in the National Football League. Very similar.
Good analogy.
To what we see in Major League Baseball. Although it's a league, and although the majors, you made it to the bigs. You want to tell me that there's a level playing field in baseball?
But the Yankees are down 3 games and under the Dodgers, so anything is possible. But to be quite frank with you, I just talked about this on the Coons Market Black and Gold Sunday show. Can the Pirates ever get back in our lifetime what we remember in the 70s? Bookend World Series, always playing for something that mattered, usually until they ran into the big red machine, Cincinnati. But they were relevant. And then you had them in the early 90s. They were relevant. And it's been a long time, and you have to really wonder if it'll ever happen again. So the thing that is, so many things have been going on here, and I'm so glad we had a chance to get caught up today a little earlier than normal because I got a busy rest of the week, so I wanted to make sure I took care of the coach. But somebody said something to me the other day that I thought was just prolific. Because of the transfer portal, they're not really recruiting players anymore. Like traditional recruiting goes. Right. You may be one of the last places that actually goes out in college football and recruits a senior, visits the school, talks to the coach, talks to the family, talks to the teachers. So is this actually hurting your cause to get a leg up, or was it better off the way it was?
Well, I think in any situation or any system that changes, you got to find a way to be successful. And that's with any company, that's any football program, athletic program, anything. You got to find a way. I mean, so the rules changed. So what do we do about that? Well, is the portal going to help us? Well, it could. We could get some kids just because of the majors that we have. It's going to help schools that are going to have additional money for transfers, that they absolutely want to be able to maintain success, and they're going to put that in. And it's kind of like this, free agency. How much money do you want to go ahead and put out there, and the amount of money the Yankees have spent since
think about it. When did the Yankees become relevant again after a very long drought? When George Steinbrenner came in and brought in people like Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson, that's when things started to change for them. So
Right.
great analogy.
It is. And it comes down to that. It really does. It comes down to what, it's very simple question. It's a question that we ask our football players. Do you want to play football? And the question that's asked to any organization is, do you want to win? And a lot of people say they want to win because they want to win on game night or they want to win on game day in football. The truth is, question is, do you want to pay the price to be able to win? And the Yankees have spent more money than an exorbitant amount of money. And unless something changes, they're going to come away with, they haven't won a World Series since
'09.
'09. Think about how much money.
And Aaron Judge, the most prolific power hitter in the game, is batting .083, and he's got 7 strikeouts. And Ohtani, who makes more than the entire Pirate organization, everyone that works for that great organization, still my favorite in a single year. Even though he's deferred some of the payments, he's still worth a whole lot of cash. He's only got 1 hit. So I still think there is that power of positive thinking and rising above it when all seems to be failing around you. But man, it's just getting more and more difficult to win at any level. I mean, even look at some of the high schools that are out there. You got athletes leaving 1A schools and going to 5A schools or private schools. And now you have co-ops and private schools involved. I mean, if you could go back in time and you were a pharmaceutical salesman who could have had an incredible career and a whole lot less to worry about, if you knew what you know now, would you still be a coach?
I think the answer would be yes. It would still be yes.
You love the game.
Well, it's not only you love the game. I mean, the game is one part of it. The problem is, if you go into coaching because you just love the game, you're going to get disappointed because the game's going to disappoint you. I mean, football is going to break your heart. But if you're in football and you're realizing it's for something else, and you really try to get invested into the young men that you're coaching, and you're looking at this as trying to help them for the rest of their life, like so many coaches have helped us, then it takes on a little bit of different slant. But for those of us who still look at success by what the scoreboard says, it is really, really difficult to live in the idea that you're sowing seeds for the future. And as Christians, we're called to do that. So that is really the dilemma.
But here's what really separates, I think, Geneva, and I am a little biased, from so many other places. It's the spirituality, it's the education, it's the degree. When you begin that life journey and you have a diploma from a place like Geneva, it means something, but also it can evolve into a spiritual journey that can put you on a course that long after you hang up your cleats, you're going to be doing positive things because you're not going to be alone out there.
No, you're not going to be alone. You learn things through adversity. Everybody will talk about this. You learn more from losing than you do from the joy of winning. And what we've done is we've prepared our players from day one with the idea of how to finish, how to persevere through difficult situations.
Before we talk a little bit more about your program, because I have a little extra time today and I'm not in such a rush, there's some other things that I just piqued my interest and I want to get your thoughts on. So how do you get a Russell Wilson, who I think is a Hall of Famer, because of that great Barry Alvarez out of Burgettstown and others? He ends up in Wisconsin, goes into the pros, has a lot of success, Coach Carroll and company. Then he goes for the big money to Denver and Sean Payton, who had some success with a 6-foot quarterback by the name of Drew Brees. They just had that personality clash. He still threw 26 touchdown passes. Then he's kind of exiled, if you will, here to Pittsburgh. But the guy's just been a consummate pro, never complained, never pointed fingers, oh, woe is me, even when Justin Fields kind of leapfrogged him a little bit. And now he's playing in a system, Arthur Smith, that makes him seem like, yeah, he is everything we thought he was. Isn't it amazing how quickly you can go from
How
hero to zero and the other and become the GOAT once again and be loved, and also turning heads in the National Football League saying, you know what? This guy may be someone we may want to resign for the next 3-4 years. How's that happen, Coach?
it's just things occur. I mean, you can go from hero to zero real quick. And for a culture, American culture, where we build these heroes up in our minds, right? And when they fall, which all of us will at one time, or do something
right
that's not heroic, we look at this story. But it kind of makes me laugh, because the VH1 flashbacks of all the bands that ever sustained themselves over the years. You have the band starting out, right? and then they're smashed, whatever they're doing. And then all of a sudden they've hit it really big. And then all of a sudden, what happens, Rob? Boom.
Music.
They go from hero to zero behind the music. And then you find out that the true thing that they really love is music. All right. And they come back and then reinvent themselves in something different. And the guy's playing a guitar somewhere in a venue that's like with 1,200 people.
And he's happy.
And he's so happy. And truthfully, he probably could put the same thing to Russell Wilson. You know, that time that he spent in Denver was it was horrible. It was not a good match. It wasn't this. And, is this thing in Pittsburgh going to, benefit him? We'll see. But right now, he's got a supporting cast, and the guys on offense, I mean, they look like it. We'll see.
So you have Pitt and SMU, a really good football team. SMU survived a scare from Duke this past week. And when I think of SMU, I think of the Pony Express, Eric Dickerson, maybe the greatest, or at least in the top 10, the conversation running backs of all time. But you've got Pitt thriving right now, and I'm loving it. And the guy that gave me the advice about they're not recruiting anymore was Billy Chirpek, who played at Pitt with Mr. Freilich and company. So I've just always been a fan of Pitt for a number of reasons. Tony Dorsett actually played high school football on this field while playing Beaver Falls. But West Virginia, and you got Penn State and Ohio State this weekend, epic matinee matchup. But your beloved West Virginia, I mean, where's Don Nealon when you need him, or Richie Rodriguez? I mean, I don't know what, and I can't solely blame it on the coach, but you would think a town that is wrapped around their college football team, kind of like the Horseshoe in Columbus and Ohio State, that there'd be athletes just kicking the door in and name, image, and likeness, and they'd be in the top 15 every year. How the mighty have fallen, kind of that, hero to zero, sadly, for those of us who like football. What's happened to West Virginia?
I don't think I'm an expert,
but you've been there. You know
this.
what that means to that Morgantown, that town. That
but community. I have absolutely followed. I mean, I truly look at WVU, as Geneva. It's a place where I went to school.
Mirror image.
And a couple things. Rich stays at West Virginia.
Rodriguez.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Rich Rodriguez stays at West Virginia, and they beat Pitt in that game. Morgantown ends up looking a lot like Norman, Oklahoma. Because now you got that small town in the state of West Virginia. The people in West Virginia absolutely love West Virginia. They do. And they love the Mountaineers. And the success they've had in football, if you really go back and look at their history, now it's not as illustrious as Pitt with all the Hall of Famers and the national championships, but West Virginia in the past has been successful. They have to find the right niche. I mean, right now, they're in a very difficult league. And, the question is, what's attracting players to come to Morgantown? Obviously, NIL has something to do with it.
But have we seen that happen in other great communities of college football fame, like Coach Osborne in Nebraska.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, maybe cornfields aren't as enticing as they once were, or the hills of wild and wonderful West Virginia. And what I would say to these athletes, because I've done some traveling in my time and been to many of these communities doing play-by-play, there's still something really special about the hills of West Virginia and about those cornfields in Nebraska. You think of players like Major Harris at West Virginia, 1988 national championship run, comes out of the city of Pittsburgh. Johnny Rogers, that great running back from Nebraska.
Yeah.
I just hope that Hollywood hasn't gotten so big that it's taken over true history and great history when it comes to legendary college football programs.
No, I think, when you look at those types of programs, people go on different runs and they get it. The recipe works. We had that here for a while, and everything was aligned properly. And it has to be aligned properly, top to bottom, inside out. And in Nebraska, they made a mistake on a coach. They really did. They got rid of a guy who was very boring, in Frank Solich. And Frank Solich was one of the best football coaches just right out of the Tom Osborne. So they made a mistake and they paid for it. And, they got a guy there now that understands football and will put it together. But everybody's looking for that. We call it the recipe for success. Everybody's looking for it.
Are there college coaches out there today that make you think of, and this is local stuff. We talked about Nealon, we talked about Rich Rodriguez, but I mean, you think of Joe Paterno, what Franklin's been able to do there, incredible. Billy O'Brien had a little bit of a stint there. I think of Tom Bradley, obviously one of the best recruiters in the history of college football. Lou Holtz, you have to think of him. But, I mean, think about it. Majors and Sherrill and Fazio. Do you have that same belief that there are those college coaches that are going to withstand the test of time and transcend time to where 20, 30 years after their coaching, we're going to be talking about it? Has the game of college football affected coaches, and will we never see the likes of the best ever, Nick Saban, again?
Well, I find it really hard to believe that there'll be another Alabama with the way things are so competitive now. I will even say this. I don't know if you're going to see, even in Division III, there was some information that was just sent out. I was surprised that it was sent out, but it was coaches that have stayed in one place for the greatest period of time. We actually have 3 coaches in the President's Conference who have stayed at their position longer than 20 years. 3 in one conference. I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think you're going to get that. And, and the reason is because everything's so competitive. It's so competitive. It's people for different reasons take different jobs. Right now USC is going through a tough time. And I got to tell you, when Pete Carroll had USC, they were on a roll.
He's still a great coach, I think.
He is. Mac Brown. Look at Mac Brown. Mac Brown is, he can go on and on and on. I do believe there's one guy that it's going to be very difficult for anyone to ever surpass what he did. And he's a Division III guy that's right out here in Mount Union and out there in Alliance, Ohio. And what Coach Karras did, and how
they don't cut players there, do they?
No. Well, what Coach Karras did, along with the entire Mount Union community and the entire area, came together and top to bottom.
But you know what I think the most exciting story that has local ties in college football, along with all of us who love Pitt, of course, that's the number one story. But Cignetti at Indiana.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they're undefeated.
Yes.
I mean, not Indiana, Pennsylvania, connected to that, but Indiana.
Well, he did coach there too.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
Well, and his dad was the coach at West Virginia at one time. So, that is really a great story.
That's a great story.
Now, is he going to keep that success? I don't know. And the guy that was there before him, they had some success. But Indiana's not a joke. It's, how is it that some of these schools still maintain the idea that they're a basketball school? Like Indiana, Kansas, North Carolina, Kansas. So they can't be a football school too?
Why not?
Indiana. That's basically what. Why can't be a football school too?
Notre Dame did it for a while.
Yeah. Why can't you? And places that are football schools that all of a sudden now aren't bad in basketball. Florida was amazing in football. And Billy Donovan shows up and wow.
We got a basketball team.
We got a basketball program.
Back to Geneva. You have a few more weeks left. So just obviously the things you'd like to see other than the obvious wins more than losses. But what are you really just trying to build with this football team? And are some of these players more so coming back? Do you have numbers when it means we're going to reload next year, or is it basically going to be from the ground up?
No, what we're looking to do is, and what I anticipate is these next 3 games. This game is a huge game. Bethany has enough talent to beat us. They really do. I mean, when I look at them on both sides of the ball, they're in the same situation. They're hungry for a win. I'm sure their coach is looking at us and saying, "Hey, look who Geneva beat and look who they lost to." It's a very similar story. Mm-hmm. And we're going down there and we have got to play well to win. I think there might have been only one game this year where we played badly and still won, which surprised me. So in these next 3 weeks, and this week right here, it's just getting on the road, taking a group of young guys, going down and playing a team that, quote unquote, on paper,
right,
it should be a decent outcome. I've been in this thing long enough to know that I'm already preparing our guys that this is more than a trap game. These guys have more experience than we have, and they got more talent. And we got to go down there and do what we do and use our grit and the strength and the approach to team that makes this group different.
So do you approach it the same as you did when you started 3 decades ago, or are you kind of going through what I'm going through now in my life? When I was driving over here, came through our hometown, and I was like, better savor this stuff because it's, the call of the wild. I mean, it's getting to that point where, you've been around a few of these falls, and for years you're just going at the speed of sound, and it's one memory after another, but you don't really savor it enough because the pictures and everything's moving so fast. It seems like time is going faster, but moments are going slower.
We violated the whole idea of enjoying the process. We did. We violated it. And that's one of Saban's things. Now, I have a hard time. I would love to sit down and talk with him to ask him, did you really enjoy the process? Because the process is while you're going through it, like you said, and you put it in a very, very descriptive manner.
Did that make sense?
Yes. Oh, it makes great sense. But I know that our second or third year, I don't know what year would have been 96, we're playing somebody that we should beat. And we got a talented team. And I'm putting mousetraps up in our locker room because it's a trap game. And, if you eat the rat poison, you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
If you did the same thing this week.
I will tell you this, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would savor moments more, but I still have this thing. I could have the biggest guest, the greatest show, move the meter, send great headlines around the world, and I've done it at every level.
Yeah.
But as soon as my eyes open the next day, I feel as though I've got to beat what I did the day before.
What's this continuous improvement model that's built in us? And a lot of it is the competitive nature of swimming ahead of the sharks or the fear of getting beat. You know, for some of us, losing and is just
it's hard to tolerate.
It's hard. It's really hard to tolerate.
It is. Do you think that maybe you'd like to have one more moment where you step out on the practice field, it's 2-a-days and the August sun is beating down and you see that player and you're like, this could be the one. I mean, this could be the one. You know, I listen to some of the talent that I work with now, the younger people, and I'm just in awe. I mean, just really great talent. And I want to see one more great one. You know, the crack of the bat of Terry Francona. You know, just one more before they say, okay, turn the mic off, shut the camera off, and now go live your life.
Right. Yeah, I think I look at that with some of the young coaches that just I look at them and their approach is, outstanding.
You know, you knew Terry much better than I, and some of the friends that we have in our inner circle did as well. But did it really come just natural to him? I mean, athletics, people look at him now as the grizzled veteran, you know, future Hall of Famer in his 6th decade. But we remember him with the brown curly locks of hair, picking up a golf club, a baseball bat, a basketball, and just, it was like effortless, was it not?
Yeah, it was effortless. I mean, you need to talk to Coach Fazio about that high school
Great
team.
Fazio.
Or you need to talk to, some of the guys that played in the Legion team. There were a lot of players who were very gifted on that team. Terry, anything he did, whether it was golf, whether it was, basketball, whether it was hitting a baseball, throwing a baseball. I mean, he was just an athlete, pure athlete. And he was around that and surrounded by it.
Let me just give you one example. And the reason I bring this up, because I believe there is a God. And I think the saying God-given talent is true. I basically almost flunked out of high school, barely got out of high school, but I had a gift to talk. Can't write, can't do anything, was never a great athlete, wasn't even that good looking, but I could talk and it worked. But I remember as a kid watching some of my friends play sports. Mark Nemesek, effortless, okay?
Effortless.
Joe Hogan, for hours, basically, we would go to the court and my job was to rebound. Okay, and I would just watch him with this jump shot that was
great
fluent.
Jump shot.
And he transcended here from CCBC, where he played for Jarrett Durham, who I had a great conversation with the other day.
I still remember Joe's jump shot.
Listen, it was a thing of beauty. It was poetry in motion. And the blonde flowing hair, and before the ball even hit the net, he was falling back on defense. But I'm so glad that I had that journey. And every time I've been behind a microphone or in front of a camera at a sporting event, and I've done everything. I mean, wrestling, boxing, baseball, football, basketball. When I see something like that and I think, oh, this could be the one, I go back to my memories with my friend Joe Hogan, Mark Nemesek, hearing stories about Terry Francona. And it's as much of a thrill today as it was then. And I think this is what fuels the fire, Coach, that makes me still want to do this when I really don't need to anymore.
It does.
But you just want that one more time.
Well, I think if you talk to Terry and ask him who on that team had a beautiful swing, just an incredible swing at the plate. My guess is he's probably going to say Johnny Albanese. And John Albanese,
oh yeah,
who batted right behind T, probably had one of the greatest swings and was one of the best baseball players to come out of New Brighton. And I really, that's one thing that I probably regret, because I was hung around John a lot. is he and T were very similar.
But you know what Mark Nemisak would jump in here and say right now if he were here, and that's why I'm going to do it for him. People seem to forget about that other Francona, Danny Francona.
Oh, Danny was.
Now we know Tito, Terry's dad, was everything, but people don't really remember the skill set of Danny Francona,
Right.
who may have been an actual better all-around athlete.
Well, I mean, he's, a catcher. Danny could shoot basketball. It was just his father was a really good athlete. I just you look at this and you say, okay, whether it's in coaching, whether it's an athletic skill, if you brought Coach Summer in and talked to him about pitchers that he has now on the baseball team, is going to be, who are you coaching right now that can throw the ball like one of the guys that you played with here at Geneva or went to the World Series with? I think we do that stuff. I really do. I mean, we got a couple kids that over the years that would bring me back to some of the great players that we had. And,
I would never make you do this, but only because you know me. I'm the guy in the diner who's just listening because I love these stories. And it's probably why I found a career, because I've always been passionate about it. Joe and I were talking the other day, Joe Hogan, and I brought up the fact I live in Monaca. You wouldn't not believe this if you haven't heard me already say it. Larry Bruno, who actually played football here, coached basketball in Monaca along with football before he came to Beaver Falls. But Little Monaca, population at its height when the mills were booming, maybe 8,000, 3 NBA players.
Yeah.
Mickey, Brad Davis, Billy Zaw. I mean, all from Monaca. I mean, that's remarkable when you think about it, right? I mean, that's pretty impressive. And in this place, it was just National Tight End Day the other day. Joe Walton grew up
here.
Yeah. I mean, these are the things that make me want to get up and do what I do every day. But I would never ask you, but I'm going to. Greatest player, or maybe a few of the greatest players that you've ever coached to, you still think of them often, especially on beautiful sun-drenched fall-like days like today here at Reeve Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious, their names are up on the board, or up on the wall. Those are the greatest ones. And I don't know.
Getting choked up on me. You got to give me some names. They can't see the wall. I mean, I know who's up there, but
problem is, I'm going to leave somebody out.
Okay.
I really am. I'm going to leave somebody out. I mean, we're going to talk about this year's team. Some of
that moxie.
Some of the players. When I look at players, and we look at greatest players, I honestly look at it from a standpoint of what kid showed up with the least amount of talent and left with the greatest impact on the program. That's the way I look at success. And
that's why you're a successful motivator, mentor, and coach. But I think anybody that's ever played for you, and I know a lot of them, they have love for you as an X and O guy, but it's what you taught them after football.
Well, I was tougher. I was tougher on those guys that were very, very talented. Much tougher. Almost to the point where you single them out, and everybody knows that you're tougher on them. And whether it's the quarterback or whether it's somebody like the kids that we got right now on this team that stand out as the leaders, I'm going to hold them more accountable, because I think the rest of the group will follow them. What I'm just thinking right now is, we got a couple of kids playing running back right now that this time last year, if you'd have told me they're on the field, I would have said no. But they are so tough.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching two of them lift down in a weight room yesterday, and they were attacking the weight room, and I was like,
"That's a thing of beauty."
So why? Yeah. So I'm looking at it and I'm
clanging
saying,
and banging.
Here's this kid. They're attacking this workout. They're attacking this workout, and now they're starting. And there's a sophomore, and he may have came in as, he's decent, probably be a JV kid, but he's relentless. To me, that's the stuff that I remember most.
I'll leave you with this. Even though I am 67 years of age, and I've been doing this for 40 plus years, every football season, and I mentioned this name to Johnny McCougar doing one of his shows over there at New Brighton the other day, and he probably had the deer in the headlight look. I got to go back and look at the tape because he probably doesn't even know who I was talking about. But every football season, you know who comes to mind? I see myself barely eye level of that chain link fence at Oak Hill. Okay, on the track, not like on outside, because we actually did get in to watch the games. And I still see, and the band just, and him turning the bend, what then now we'd call a jet sweep. I don't know what it was known then, but grass stained, white pants, mud literally stuffed into his face mask. Jeffrey Murdoch.
Jeffrey Murdoch was amazing.
Listen, God rest his soul, who was doing God's work when he passed. But to me, what I wish somebody would do, behind the music on this guy. Because man, when he was at his pinnacle, he was one of the great, and I've seen them all. I mean, believe me, Essex Law, on down the line, Tony Dorsett, that guy, man, he was everything high school football was and still is to me. Jeffrey Murdoch, 5'11", maybe, but man, he could run with authority. Do you remember Jeffrey Murdoch? Somebody remember Jeffrey Murdoch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of that too is like the time of your life when, you look and, I remember Poe James only because my uncle was on that team. And my grandma and grandpa, my dad, we would go and we would sit in the same seats, and I might have been 5 or 6, but just being there, and it's just such a great memory of being part of something that was so big at that time, especially you're 6, 7 years old, and you're in this, and this, at that time, I mean, just like the kids today, but at that time, it was, if you were a high school football star,
you were everything.
You were everything.
That's right.
You
had that letter sweater, man. When you walked into the 5 and 10 in New Brighton, everybody stopped.
We had some of that when I was in high school. We really did. There was that kind of pride, but never when you're younger and you looked at, the guys that were playing. And the biggest thing was at the end of the game, I remember asking somebody for their chin strap.
Oh, I know.
So they would take their chin strap off and throw it to you.
Man, that was
and and honestly, to this day, I don't remember.
Listen, I hope
Adam Johnson. That's who I think it was. He was a running back.
Realize how good those teams were with Judge Ross and all that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Pasquale. These names.
Oh yeah, they're just.
Then you go back to Kluka, Swan, Moses Perkins, Poe James. But I was 10 his senior year. And Matt Rach's father, God rest his soul, I went to visit him after he was in an automobile accident. We're talking football. And I said, Monaca, I love Monaca, but man, that year that they wrote Go for Poe on their helmets, Monaca, and this is how the stars come to line sometimes. He went, I was the coach of Monaca. I'm the reason we did that. I mean,
that's just so as soon as you talked about Coach Rach, and I knew him, he worked here. He was a volunteer for us, or I had him employed when I was the AD here because he's a Geneva guy.
He's a Geneva guy.
I still remember his son, Matt.
What a player, Westminster.
I still remember Matt playing for Monaca against Rochester and him just absolutely running people over. And Rochester was outstanding. I thought at that time that was one of the greatest games I've seen a kid play.
Speaking of Monaca, you remember Matt Phillips?
Oh, yeah.
He was another. I think about bruising running backs, out of that Larry Zonka mode, running downhill and just plowing people. Monaca, that tradition. Listen, the only tradition that I'm so happy we still have in Monaca, I even haven't been there forever, is the Sons of Italy. Oh. And they're having spaghetti dinners on Election Day, so I want to give them some love. But the reason I bring that up, Mark McCouga and I and many others have this dream of getting a building and having our place to display all this paraphernalia that New Brighton history is about. But he has one thing in his possession that I've got to get my hands on. He's got some plates left over from the New Brighton Sons of Italy that the great Mr. Pasquale, God rest his soul, used to tell me about all the time.
Wow.
And he told me, he said, oh yeah, my grandmother actually did all the cooking at one time at the Sons of Italy in Monaco. Were you ever in the Sons of Italy in New Brighton?
Yes.
I think I was in there one night.
Yes.
Andy Emmerich had a little card game going there back in the day, but I haven't been. I mean, what a beautiful place, man. I mean, I heard nothing but great stories about that Sons of Italy. And you guys were all sons of Italians that we just mentioned. Johnny Albanese, Terry, all you guys, man.
Yeah.
Great memories. But you realize the memories that you've created here at Geneva? And if you look at Geneva, you mentioned Mr. Rach, think about it. When Geneva had those years, who was really doing it? You had a Hogan on the basketball team. You had Billy Ray's, a New Brighton product, when they had a resurgence in the 70s on the football field here. So when you get the Hollerans of the world and others from New Brighton, Beaver Falls that matriculate here, either in basketball, football, or whatever the sport, man or woman, usually good things happen, right?
Well, I mean, that is what you want to have happen in a local college. I mean, you want to be able to have all the local people come. I think it's the YSU success. It's like anybody that's in Ohio goes to YSU, and YSU ends up turning themselves into an incredible football program where they win national championships, really based on getting Ohio kids. When Larry Karras first started, I know it was mostly Ohio kids. Some of our greatest success was guys that we were just getting out of the regional area, and it's changed, but everything changes.
Yeah, we have to mention before I leave. We have to mention this because I had a chance to talk to him a few weeks ago. Coach Bradley, what he's done at Elwood City.
Oh yeah,
they won the MAC undefeated. First time they did that since I think the 40s. That's pretty remarkable.
And that place has tradition. I mean, it's known as a baseball town, incredible baseball town.
Pretty good basketball team.
They've had a few basketball teams. Yeah. But they've got an outstanding football team. They really do. And
Bradley,
he's a heck of a coach. He really is.
He came from Ocean. I thought to myself, now why would he come to Elwood City? Had such a nice run there. And I'm thinking, look, Les Carl Flory showing up again. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. Lo and behold, voila. So, and by the way, Mr. Mancini out there at McElwain, big fan of all sports. And I never realized this because I have this perception of geography sometimes. That's why I need a GPS system to find the kitchen at night. I never realized that I'm sitting there and they're talking about YSU and Elwood one night. YSU, we're big fans. You want to go to the game? YSU. I said, I don't have a couple of hours to drive to Youngstown. They're like, Rob, you did play-by-play for 20 years. You've been all over the tri-state. We're just about 30 minutes from the football field at Youngstown State. What did Jim Tressel mean to that program? Then we'll say goodbye.
Oh.
Did you ever meet him?
Well, I played for his dad at Baldwin Wallace.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. And I've met Coach Tressel many times. Amazing family.
And isn't it amazing when you think
amazing family.
Dyke Beatty, the father-in-law of Frank Dawson, invented the penalty flag, YSU, and one of his recruits from Trafford, PA, Sonny Vaccaro, who went on to develop Air Jordan, right?
Yeah.
Hey, best of luck. Thanks for letting me catch up. It's better than paying a therapist. I'm trying to save some money to get my house painted.
No, this was actually great. It took my mind off the fact that we've got to go down and take care of business Saturday.
Listen, I don't think
we have to. This is
every week I come here. This guy is deep in thought, going over film, talking to players, coaches, and I've been doing this forever. I started this journey over 10 years ago, hundreds of thousands of videos in various forms on my dime, just to pay back people who've done so much good for me. But I can tell you, there's never been one time that you aren't as enthusiastic as you were 10 years ago. And when we were doing the Geneva College TV show, I mean, you still put everything you have into this thing.
It's just the way some of us are wired. You're wired the same way. I just... so
then I can ask you this. Why not? because I'm all in on this election. That's all I've been talking about. And you gave me a nice compliment about my evening shows when we came here. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
Couldn't do it without all the people at Odyssey, KDK, and my great producers. We make it all happen. But what do you think? Where are we right now in this country? You got any advice for me, Coach?
Well, anything that I'm going to say has already been said. I mean, I have spent.
We need more faith. We need people to come together.
I've spent every day, probably in the last 2-3 years, just dwelling on this whole idea of this election. I put so much emphasis and so much effort into, hoping which way it's going to go. And I'm not going to tell you which way I'm going to vote because, quite frankly, there isn't one person that's going to watch this video and say, wow, I might vote for that person because...
Yeah, you got to let people make up their own mind.
I just want to see our country, because we're in such a heavy divide and it's so close. I just want to see our country come together and want to see America thrive. It definitely is a very, very tenuous time.
Listen, and this is a perfect way to end this. We were talking a lot about our hometown, which we like to do from time to time, and people seem to enjoy it. But if you think back when we grew up, people from all walks of life, all religious beliefs, all races, you had the have and the have-nots, but we had each other, and we had each other's back. And no matter whose table I was sitting at, enjoying dinner or on the front porch, laughing, or a game of catch in the backyard, I didn't see anybody but one thing: the human race.
We had each other's back.
We did.
We did.
Geno, DeMarco, your Pratt Pack, back on the radio tonight at 6. They're back in action this weekend against Bethany, and we'll be back here next week. Don't forget, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There's always more sports at 93.7thefan.com.